Hello everybody, this is Fred Agnew with Inside Pool Magazine and Inside Pool Extreme News. I'm here today with Dan Dishaw, Cuemaker extraordinaire in the BCA Nationals in Las Vegas, Nevada. Dan, where are you from?
I'm from upstate New York, Syracuse, right in the middle of the state.
And how long have you been making cues?
It's roughly around 16, 17 years now.
What got you started?
I've always been a wood guy. I've always been working on wood. I was a cabinet maker when I was younger, and I did musical instrument restorations for 25 years. I've always been intrigued by wood. And it's been a pleasure working with different types of wood from all over the world. And a friend of mine asked me to make him a cue one year, and I made 64 of them, and I just haven't looked back since.
Now, if you made cues, that must mean that you were a pool player for quite a while.
My dad taught me how to play when I was in my early teens, and it's got to the point where I was as good as him, if not a little bit better, and we enjoyed ourselves as we went through our ages, and it was a pleasure learning how to play the game.
Now, it's very interesting that there are only about 40 million pool players out there, but of course you're up in the Syracuse area. How many cues do you make a year?
Well, I started out with about 100, 150, somewhere in that vicinity, and then I sort of dialed in onto a certain type of a niche that I've done, and that seems to be the more higher dollar and more collectible type stuff that's classified as a gallery type cue.
Now, when you say gallery type cue, now some people might be thinking that it's really not a cue to play with and just to look at. What do you think about that?
No, that's not true. I mean, every cue that I've made is meant to play with. It's meant to break balls with. It is a work of art that is functional. There are other cue makers who have done gallery cues in the past for events that certainly are not playable, but they are just wonderful pieces to look at. But my stuff is really meant to play with. It's really a functional piece of work.
Well, with that idea in mind, what do you consider to be the most important aspects of a cue?
In my opinion, and really this is probably a subjective thing, but in my opinion, I think the tip and the shafts are really the most important and critical part of the cue. I think that if you, as a wood person, you should be able to look at a piece of wood and look at the end grain on it and judge the density and hardness of it by the growth rings per inch that you can measure. So if a customer likes a light hitting cue, you want to see a little bit less of that density in the shaft. That's going to produce a little softer hit, and something with a lot more grain, a lot tighter grain structure, that's going to be a little heavier, and it's going to give you a harder type hit.
Now, what about the bottom half of the cue, the butt of the cue? How much does that actually affect the playability?
It does, it really does. It depends on how it's constructed. There's a lot of guys who seem to want to, as you notice, that you see a forearm on a cue, and then there's a handle where there's a wrap. Those are put together in a certain manner. Some guys put the wrap tenon up into the front, and some guys put the tenon down into the handle. And there are some cue makers who use a continuous core throughout the whole cue. It's a subjective thing. I think the objective is to make a butt that doesn't make any noise and is very, very solid and has a nice uniform density to it, and there's no rattle.
Now, you are very heavily involved in the American Cuemakers Association.
Yes,
Tell us about your involvement in that.
Well, I was involved with the politics of this industry for a good 10 years. I was the president of the American Cuemakers Association. I was the president of the Academy of American Cue Art, and I was also involved as a board member of the Billiard Congress of America. I served on several committees with trying to promote the industry as a whole. I resurrected the Hall of Fame for the American Cuemakers Association. We've started some events at the Hopkins show to commemorate some of the collectors. We have a collectors party that we initiate every other year. So it was more of a love thing for me.
Labor of love.
Labor of love. I really enjoyed doing it. It was really nice to see things happen from start to finish, and I really enjoyed myself doing it. But after 10 years, I said to myself it was time to move on and let someone else with brighter ideas and a little bit more enthusiasm and younger guys that step up and take the reins.
So if somebody wanted to join the American Cuemakers Association, how do they go about doing that?
That's pretty tough. No, you have to be pretty good with your woodworking skills to be a part of the American Cuemakers Association. You have to submit a cue, and it has to be reviewed by a panel, and it's got to be pretty close to being perfect, or else they will make suggestions for you. We're not going to turn anybody off. We're going to make suggestions and ask that you look at certain things that fell a little short, and then say, well, just resubmit next year or something, so that, you know, take a look at these ideas and think about concentrating in certain areas that you weren't really doing that well in. And for the most part, people will come back and they listen to our suggestions, and now they're members. So it's a good thing. I think that the people the new guys who come in, the American Cuemakers Association offers instant credibility for a cuemaker, because we are so picky and we are very demanding in our requirements.
And how many members do you have currently?
Well, there's probably about 80 Cuemakers in there now, but there's somewhere in excess of maybe 100 members, which include associate members, merchandising members, and voting members. So I don't really know what the total is right now, but I think it's just a little over 80.
All right. Let's take a look at some of your cues here, Dan, because several people out there may have never seen a Dan Dishaw cue, not coming from the Northeast maybe. So we'll take a look at some of the ones on the left here.
This is some of the stuff that I've really been noted for. Is I utilize a lot of snake wood, which is an exotic wood from Tanzania, Africa. It's actually the heartwood of a tree. It's the very center core of the tree, and as it goes away from the center, it turns white, and they harvest the center core. It's very difficult to work with. You have to be very experienced knowing how to use it, but it certainly gives you beautiful results in terms of its look and its overall playability. Here's some others. Here's some new designs that I've done. These are called the old traditional butterflies, but I've incorporated the new technology with large points in it and silver work along the edges, and a little bit of deco design here. All come with leather wrap, and I changed the typical butt sleeve size to a little bit longer, giving me a little bit more canvas on the cue to add some artwork to it. So these are typically some of the new designs that I'm doing.
Well, certainly, Dan, those are some fine-looking cues, some of the best-looking cues I've ever seen. They certainly do belong in a gallery of any kind, and as I know, I've shot with a few of your cues a few times. They're excellent playing cues. Everybody, Dan Dishaw, cue maker, excellent. This is Fred Agnew, Extreme News, Inside Pool. Thank you.